In the summer of 1942, the city of Stalingrad stood quietly along the Volga River, unaware that it would soon become the center of one of the most brutal battles in human history. The war between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union had already consumed millions of lives, but what was about to happen here would redefine the meaning of destruction, endurance, and sacrifice on a scale the world had never witnessed before. Adolf Hitler believed capturing Stalingrad would cripple Soviet industry and shatter morale. The city carried Stalin's name, making it a symbolic target as much as a strategic one. For Hitler, victory here meant dominance over the Eastern Front. For the Soviet Union, losing it meant humiliation and potential collapse, so retreat was not an option. German forces began their assault with overwhelming air power. Bombers turned homes, factories, and schools into ashes within days. Thousands of civilians were killed before the ground battle even started. Streets disappeared under rubble, and smoke covered the sky so completely that daylight felt like dusk. When German troops entered the city, they expected a quick victory. Instead, they walked into a nightmare. Soviet soldiers emerged from ruins, basements, and shattered walls. Every building became a fortress. Every staircase became a killing zone. Progress was measured in meters, paid for with blood. Soldiers fought at distances so close they could hear each other breathe. Rifles, knives, shovels, and even bare hands were used. Entire platoons were wiped out over control of a single room. This relentless urban combat earned the name, Rattenkrieg, a war fought like rats in the dark. The Soviet command adopted a simple strategy: stay close to the enemy. By fighting at point-blank range, they neutralized German air support and artillery. This tactic came at a terrible cost, but it slowed the advance and exhausted the attacking forces day by day. Civilians who had not escaped lived underground for months. Families hid in cellars without food, water, or medical care. Children grew up surrounded by explosions. Many died silently beneath the ruins, never recorded, never counted, victims erased by the chaos of war. As autumn turned into winter, the temperature dropped sharply. German soldiers lacked proper winter clothing. Weapons froze. Engines failed. Frostbite claimed fingers and toes. Hunger became constant, gnawing at bodies already weakened by endless combat. Meanwhile, Soviet forces received reinforcements from the east. Fresh troops, hardened by winter conditions, arrived quietly. While the Germans focused on the city, the Red Army prepared something far more devastating beyond the ruins of Stalingrad. In November 1942, the Soviets launched Operation Uranus. Instead of attacking the city directly, they struck the weaker German flanks held by Allied forces. The attack was swift and overwhelming. Within days, the German Sixth Army was completely surrounded. Panic spread among German commanders, but Hitler ordered them to hold their ground. He promised supplies would arrive by air, a promise that could not be fulfilled. Soviet anti-aircraft fire and brutal weather destroyed supply planes faster than they could land. Food rations were cut again and again. Soldiers survived on frozen bread and melted snow. Wounded men lay untreated. Disease spread rapidly. Hope faded as it became clear no rescue was coming. Inside the encirclement, discipline collapsed. Officers lost control. Soldiers wrote farewell letters they knew would never be delivered. Some prayed, some went mad, others simply waited, staring into the ruins that had become their grave. The Soviets tightened the noose slowly. They advanced building by building, crushing resistance with artillery and close-range assaults. German positions shrank each day. Maps became useless as familiar landmarks no longer existed. By January 1943, the German army was split into smaller pockets. Ammunition ran out. Weapons were abandoned. Starving soldiers collapsed in the snow, too weak to stand, too cold to feel pain anymore. Despite the hopeless situation, Hitler promoted General Friedrich Paulus to Field Marshal, expecting him to commit suicide rather than surrender. Paulus refused. He chose the lives of his remaining men over blind obedience. On February 2, 1943, the last German forces in Stalingrad surrendered. For the first time in the war, an entire German army had been destroyed. The myth of Nazi invincibility was shattered forever. The cost of the battle was beyond comprehension. Nearly 2 million soldiers and civilians were killed, wounded, or captured. Bodies lay frozen in the streets long after the fighting stopped, silent reminders of the price paid. Survivors emerged from basements to find a city that no longer existed. No homes, no hospitals, no factories, only ruins stretching to the horizon. Yet, life slowly returned among the ashes. For the Soviet Union, Stalingrad became a symbol of resistance and victory. It proved that sacrifice, unity, and determination could overcome even the most powerful enemy. For Germany, it marked the beginning of the end. From this moment onward, the German army would retreat more than it advanced. The Eastern Front was lost. Prisoners taken at Stalingrad marched into captivity. Few would ever return home. Many died from disease and exhaustion, continuing the tragedy long after the battle ended. The world watched in shock as reports emerged. Military experts studied the battle for decades, trying to understand how human beings endured such conditions and why leaders allowed it to happen. Stalingrad showed how pride and obsession can destroy entire armies. Strategic goals turned into personal vendettas, and millions paid the price. It also showed the terrifying power of modern warfare, where cities become graves and civilians become targets without choice or protection. Even today, unexploded shells are still found in the ground. Bones still surface after heavy rain. The city remembers, even when people try to forget. Veterans who survived carried invisible wounds for the rest of their lives. Silence replaced stories, because words were never enough to describe what they had seen. Stalingrad was not just a battle. It was a warning written in blood about the consequences of war driven by ego and hatred. History records victories and defeats, but Stalingrad records human suffering on an unmatched scale, reminding future generations of the cost of ambition without mercy. And as the Volga River continues to flow past the rebuilt city, it carries with it the memory of those who fought, those who died, and those whose lives were forever changed by the war that stopped the world at Stalingrad.